Number 5 on this list is actually a movie called Santa's Sleigh. Santa's Sleigh is a Christmas horror comedy movie that was released in 2005 and has a super unique take on Santa Claus as a whole. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this movie definitely isn't the scariest out there, but its premise is simply too good to not include in this video. Basically, Santa Claus, played by Bill Goldberg, isn't the happy-go-lucky, jolly, fat-bellied fellow that we know and love. In this movie, Santa is actually a demon. Now, this demon has no love for being Santa Claus, and he is actually only doing it as a punishment. The premise of the film is that Christmas never used to be a day of giving out presents, but for thousands of years, it was called the Day of Slaying, and Santa would actually go around murdering people to his heart's content. This was right up until 1005 AD, where this demon Santa Claus had a bet with an angel that he lost, and then the angel forced him to give out presents on Christmas, or the Day of Slaying, for 1,000 years. Now, since this movie was released in 2005, and if you're keeping track of the math, that would put the demon Santa Claus right on schedule to continue his brutalistic murdering on the Christmas that this movie takes place on. Considering this movie stars Bill Goldberg, who is literally signed to a WWE contract right now and is quite the personality, the movie itself really isn't that scary, but the premise does make you wonder. Maybe Santa's origins are demonic in nature. Maybe Rudolph, instead of being a nice misunderstood reindeer, is actually a demon hellhound. Maybe instead of giving out presents, Santa really wants to be slitting our throats. I don't know, it seems like a bit of a stretch for sure, but definitely a fun thought to entertain. Number 4 on this list is The Legend of Krampus. This is less of a terrifying story about Santa Claus, but more of a story about what happens without Santa Claus. In North America, if Santa believes that you've been bad this past year, then you can expect a lump of coal to fill your stocking. As a kid, obviously this sucked and you never wanted this, but the punishment you would receive in Germany or Austria was infinitely worse. Over there, if you've been bad over the course of a year, then rather than get a lump of coal, you will get a visit from Krampus. The lore suggests that Krampus is the antithesis to Santa Claus. If Santa was God, then Krampus would be the devil basically, and I can guarantee you that you do not want a visit from the devil. Often depicted as a goat-like humanoid being that has super large horns jutting from its skull and a tongue several feet long, Krampus is definitely not pleasant on the eyes. If he decides that you're worthy of a visit, then strap in for a long night. It's said that Krampus will enter your home and torture you for being bad. He may even take you away from your house and bring you back to his lair, where he will beat and torture you some more. Legend says that he's been known to kill and eat children as well for their behavior over the past year. A visit from Krampus is all bad, and if you are a child in Austria and Germany or around that area, you just need to cross your fingers and hope that Santa Claus doesn't skip your house this year. Number 3 on this list is another movie, but a far scarier one called Sint. Sint definitely takes Santa Claus to a more terrifying place than Santa's Sleigh did. The movie is actually a Dutch film that was released in 2010, directed by Dick Maas and starring some local Dutch actors. The story begins all the way back in 1492. The Bishop Nicholas actually leads a cutthroat gang that ravages villages, steals, kills, and pillages to their heart's content. Certainly not the St. Nicholas that we are familiar with. Anyways, this Bishop Nicholas and his gang are finally murdered by some villagers who decide to revolt and fight back against their authority. This obviously isn't the end of the story though, because the ghosts of these gang members haven't had the last of these people on Earth yet. The gang was murdered on December the 5th, and every time that date coincides with a full moon, these ghostly apparitions appear on horseback and come to kill. They brutally slaughter hundreds of people. Women, children, the whole lot. This gang does not discriminate with who needs to die. This movie is a really interesting take on Christmas time legends and Santa Claus. Now, I suppose the main ghost here, the Bishop Nicholas, isn't technically Santa Claus. In fact, in the movie they call him Sinterklaas, but I figured that's pretty close. He also looks a lot like Santa too, if Santa had been dead for like 500 years and liked to murder people, and that image alone is enough to keep me up at night. Number 2 on this list is the Incubus Demon. Now, the Incubus Demon is far from Santa Claus in every way imaginable. Coming straight from Google, an incubus demon is a demon in male form who, according to mythological and legendary traditions, lies upon sleeping women in order to engage in sexual activity with them. So how does this predatory demon have anything to do with Santa Claus? Well, apparently a woman claims that she was attacked by an incubus demon who looked identical to Santa Claus on December 24th. The woman's name is Jane, and Jane was living with her husband in a suburban home in California. Her husband Mark wasn't home yet. He was coming back from a business trip very late and was going to get back at around 2 in the morning on Christmas Day. Therefore, when Jane was attacked, she was alone in the home. She went to sleep at around 11 p.m. and set up cookies and milk at her front door. This was less for Santa Claus and more as a little joke for her husband when he got home though. She went to sleep and entered into a vivid dream. In the dream, she was transported outside into the cold winter air completely naked. Freezing outside, she was trying to trek through the snow, but a blizzard kicked up and it was hard for her to see. Then she felt as her limbs froze to the ground, so she couldn't move anymore even if she wanted to. Right as that happened, the same freezing sensations entered her whole body and her stomach felt cold as ice. She woke up immediately and opened her eyes to see a figure on top of her. Her instinctual reaction was that her husband was home and waking her up. But seconds later she realized that wasn't the case. The figure was in a big bushy coat meant for the cold, and its beard was scraping against her skin. She screamed at the top of her lungs and the creature shot up to a sitting position. At that moment she got the clearest view of what looked to be a demonic Santa Claus. The same features as Santa has, but black holes for eyes and black liquid coming from its lips. She didn't have time to scream again before the creature took its hand and put it over her face and immediately sent her back into a deep sleep. She woke up the next morning with her husband laying next to her and the room as it was before she went to bed. She told him the whole story, but he tried to calm her down and convince her that it was just a bad dream. Although a nightmare could have been the cause, to this day Jane swears that the experience was as real as anything she's ever felt, and that she was attacked by an incubus demon that looked identical to Santa Claus. Number 1 on this list is a serial killer mall Santa. This is a 100% real story of a serial killer who doubled as a mall Santa as his day job. This isn't that far removed from today either, because the man pleaded guilty to several counts of first-degree murder in 2019 and was given a life sentence. The serial killer in question is Bruce MacArthur, and as I said, his day job was as an entertainer and would often be a mall Santa. Between 2010 and 2017, 8 men disappeared from a neighborhood in Toronto, Ontario. 5 of the bodies were found, but 3 have still yet to be discovered. All of these killings were the work of Bruce MacArthur. Thankfully, Bruce is behind bars now, but I personally find it extremely chilling to think that somebody who was acting regularly as a mall Santa in the Christmas months was also a serial killer in his private life. A mall Santa is someone who you let your kids go to and take pictures with, and to think that people were unknowingly putting their children in the hands of this man is really unsettling. Santa is supposed to be about joy and happiness, and there is absolutely none of that in the life of Bruce MacArthur.
Coming in at number 5, we have Alcatraz. The island of Alcatraz has always been a place for punishment. In its early days, it was a place of banishment for miscreants. People were sent to the island to be tormented by the ghosts that have always haunted the land. And if that didn't work, they would fight for what little they had to share on the island. In 1934, the notorious federal prison of Alcatraz was built. The torturing of souls continued during the prison's time. It was eventually closed in 1963 and is now a tourist location for those brave enough to walk the haunted land. There is a lot of paranormal stories that came out of Alcatraz for those who visit it today. The screams of past inmates or the feeling of being watched. But while the prison was open, the guards told a story of something that happened to both of them and the inmates on one Christmas day in the 1940s. Although the prison was known to be a horrible place to be locked up, once in a while the guards did show what little compassion they were allowed. They decided to give the inmates a great Christmas dinner. Everyone was enjoying themselves at the meal when suddenly the joy was brought to a fast end. The temperature in the room suddenly dropped and all of the candles were blown out. There was a moment of silence as no one knew what was happening or how to react. They were all in a state of shock. Suddenly, in the middle of the room, an apparition appeared. It appeared as an older man in a grey suit. After a few moments of stunned silence, a prisoner shouted at the apparition in disbelief and it vanished. It brought the Christmas celebration to a quick end and the prisoners were sent back to their rooms shaken and confused. They murmured and among themselves about what they just saw, trying to make sense of it. The guards were too shaken to stay in the residence, so they took turns on shift while others made the journey home. The warden, James Johnson, told the story partially as a warning to others who worked there in case the apparition ever returned. Coming in at number 4, we have Hever Castle. For anyone who is unfamiliar with Anne Boleyn, she was the second wife to King Henry VIII. Henry went to great lengths to marry Anne. Divorce was not allowed within the Catholic Church during this time. Henry decided to end ties to the Catholic Church and create the Church of England, just so that he could have a divorce from his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Henry was determined to get a male heir to his throne and famously went through 6 wives to achieve this. He got his divorce and married Anne Boleyn. She gave him a daughter. She did give birth to a male heir, but unfortunately he did not make it. After this, he grew bored of her and had her tried with adultery. Anne was sentenced to beheading and died on May 19th. Henry remarried on May 30th. Anne's story was tragic, and usually tragic ends leave spirits with unfinished business. Since her death, there have been rumours of her being spotted around Hever Castle. Hever Castle was her childhood home in Kent. It was reportedly the place that made her most happy, and she missed being here during her marriage. It is said that if you were to visit the castle on Christmas Day, you would see her walking the grounds. Guests have seen a figure believed to be her dressed in all white while walking over the stone bridge towards the home, as if she is finally returning home each Christmas to be with her family. Coming in at number 3, we have Bramshell House. This story started back in the 17th century. A young woman named Anne was getting married on Christmas Day at Bramshell House in Hampshire, England. After the wedding, the guests were all enjoying the celebrations. It was tradition for the wedding guests to carry the bride to her bedchamber at the end of the evening. The bride wanted to play a game before the end of the evening though. She wanted to hide and have the guests go and find her. She was given a 10-minute start. The guests looked high and low everywhere they could, but they could not find her. The guests started talking that she had fled, leaving her new husband, Lord Lovell, behind. He was distraught and didn't believe that his love would ever leave him like this. He never stopped looking for her. He looked for her for years. She never showed up. On one day, 50 years after her disappearance, he was spending some time at Bramshell House. Mourning his lost love, he was looking around the attic, drawn to it for some reason. He was knocking on the wood when he found a secret hidden door. Inside, he found an old wood chest. He pried the heavy door open, which appeared to be stuck. When he did manage to open the chest, he found the remains of his love, still in her wedding dress, clutching her flowers. There were scratches covering the inside of the lid. It seemed that she thought she had found the perfect hiding spot and climbed inside. The lid closed and locked on her, leaving her trapped forever. It seems she gave her escape a desperate attempt. As he found her, he broke down. He was distraught, looking for her for the past 50 years, but finding she had met such a tragic end didn't make him feel better. At that moment, she appeared to him. She didn't speak, but he felt a warm presence around him, as if she was saying it was okay. All she wanted for him was to finally find out what happened. Since she was found, other guests have reported seeing her around the grounds. A bride in her dress had been seen walking the hallways late at night and around the grounds in the dead of night. It is said that if you're there on Christmas night, you may hear a woman crying, mourning her lost love and her married life that she never got to experience. Coming in at number 2, we have Highwayman. This happened on a woodland road on Christmas Eve. A highwayman is the term given to men who typically on horseback would hold travellers at gunpoint to rob them back in the 18th century. There was a particular notorious highwayman in this area named Gilbert. One evening, a woman and her father were travelling through the area with their stagecoach. When they came across his path, he stopped the coach and ordered them to get out. As the woman got out of the coach, the horses got spooked and took off into the night. When the woman looked into Gilbert's face, she instantly recognised him. He had killed her brother a couple of months previously. Without hesitation, she pulled a concealed knife from under her cape. She threw the dagger into his stomach and fled. When the horse got under control, the dad returned to rescue his daughter. They found Gilbert on the side of the road. He had already passed from his wounds. They couldn't find the daughter though. The local village began to look for the daughter all through the woods. When they finally found her, she had been driven mad. They brought her home and never recovered from the experience. Something in her had snapped in those woods. From that day, everyone avoided them. It is believed that the land is now cursed and the woods are haunted. It's said that if you were to wander into the woods on Christmas Eve, you'll see the ghostly scene repeat itself at the same time it did that evening. Gilbert was buried not far from where he passed, and it's believed his spirit is angry from what happened. Be careful not to stumble upon his cursed land. hand. And finally, in at number 1 we have Christmas Day. This is a disturbing story of one man in California and his horrific act at Christmas. The story started when the man and his wife had an argument on Christmas Eve. The wife was pushed, she knocked her head on the toilet and passed away. The man carried her to bed to sleep even though she was no longer with them. The story is told by their eldest child, who was 17 at the time and witnessed everything. The man then went on to prepare the presents under the tree for the children the next morning. The next morning when they came down to celebrate Christmas, the mother was sat propped up on the sofa. One of the daughters told the police, "I remember trying to touch my mum and she was just rock hard, cold, and I said, 'Mummy,' and she didn't respond." He finally called the police after the children had opened the presents. The man was sentenced to jail. A few years later, a new family moved into the home and it was coming up to Christmas time. On Christmas Eve, when the children had gone to bed, the parents were preparing for the morning. They suddenly felt the air in the home go cold. They heard cries from upstairs and went to see if it was one of the children. They realized the children were still sound asleep in their bed. The tap started running, so they followed the sound and turned it off. Already scared about what was happening, they were unsure what to do. The mother looked in the mirror and saw a woman staring back at her. The woman mouthed, "Help." At this point, the woman screamed in terror and ran out of the bathroom. The husband went to look but didn't see the same apparition. The couple were shaken. After this, nothing else happened over Christmas. After looking into it, they found out the tragic events that occurred in the home. In California, you only need to disclose a death in the home if you specifically ask. They didn't ask and therefore had no clue about any of this until it happened. She was shocked to see the picture of the woman who had died. That was exactly who she had seen in the mirror that Christmas Eve.
In the number 5 spot, we have the Yule Lads. In Iceland, the Yule Lads are a group of 13 gnome-like creatures that pretty much take over Santa's job. These guys aren't Christmassy at all. In fact, they're little jerks. They go around playing tricks on people and stealing people's sheep. But if you're good, they leave small presents in your shoes. They don't have reindeers, but they are accompanied into people's houses by the Yuletide cat, which is described as a hungry beast that eats children. So in Iceland, you might get eaten and get your sheep stolen. That sounds pretty bad to me. In number 4 spot, we have Pierre Noel. In France, their version of Santa Claus, Papa Noel, is very similar to ours. But instead of reindeer, he rides into town on a donkey. Christmas in France is a package deal. Not only do you get Papa Noel, but you get the Whipping Father as well. The Whipping Father carries around rusty chains and gives kids a flogging if they misbehave during the year. In some versions of the stories, he's said to get even more brutal and cut off the tongues of children who've lied. In the number 3 spot, we have La Befana. They must really love their Halloween in Italy because their Christmas mascot is a witch on a broomstick. In Italy, La Befana's backstory was mainly that she gave food and shelter to the 3 wise men. La Befana delivers gifts by entering through people's chimneys and will smack spying children with her broomstick. She also has a reputation as the best housekeeper in all of Italy. She's known to sweep after herself when she leaves the house. Way better than that jerk Santa Claus. All he does is leave cookie crumbs everywhere. Next up at 2, we have Dead Mraz and the Snow Maiden. If you're celebrating Christmas in Moscow, you might get to see their version of Santa Claus. Dead Mraz, which translates to Grandfather Frost, this guy used to be one cold dude. He used to be an evil sorcerer that would kidnap kids in exchange for presents. Over time, he atoned for his evil ways by delivering gifts to children with his granddaughter, the Snow Maiden. Finally, in the number 1 spot, we have Krampus. If you're celebrating Christmas in Germany, you might be aware of the legend of Krampus. While the German version of Santa Claus is very similar to ours, there is one difference. The German version of Santa is accompanied by a bloodthirsty demon called Krampus. Krampus dishes out beatings to the bad children, but that's only if he's feeling generous. The really misbehaved children get kidnapped by Krampus and get taken straight to hell, where they are tortured for an eternity. Krampus will stuff them into a bursack and throw them into the river. Yay, Christmas! In number 5, we have skating to mass. One Christmas tradition in Venezuela has Venezuelans skating to early morning mass. From December 16th to 24th, the Venezuelan government shuts down the roads in the capital so that people can skate to their early morning mass. If there was one thing Jesus enjoyed, it was shredding some gnarly half-pipe with his homies. In number 4 spot, we have Christmas spider webs. I swear that it's not the Nightmare Before Christmas. Spider webs are actually a thing in the Ukraine. It's based off a story in which a poor family wakes up to find their bare Christmas tree covered in spider webs. The spider webs on the tree make it appear to look gold and silver in the light. While this story has a happy ending, I don't get along with spider webs. If I woke up and saw my Christmas tree covered in spider webs, I would burn down the tree and then the house house just to be safe. In the number 3 spot, we have fried chicken frenzy. In some places, it's tradition to eat Christmas ham or turkey on Christmas Day, but everyone can stop trying because the Japanese have perfected Christmas dinner. They eat fried chicken, loads and loads of fried chicken. To top it up, they eat cake for dessert. Yum! Next up at 2, we have the Christmas Witch. In Italy, Santa has one main competitor, La Befana. She is often portrayed riding her broomstick and entering people's homes through their chimneys. But she gets a way better deal than Santa. Santa only gets milk and cookies, but children usually leave food and wine for La Befana. In the number 1 spot, we have Krampus. Austria's version of Santa Claus is very, very close to ours. No weirdness here. But in Austria, Santa has a sidekick, the demon known as Krampus. Santa still delivers presents to all the children who've been good, but all the naughty children out there get abducted by Krampus and get sent down to the pits of hell. When you get down to it, it's just positive and negative reinforcement. If you're good, you get presents. But if you live in Austria and you're bad, a demon will come into your room and torture you for all of eternity.
In at number 5, Christmas with the Colonel. In Japan, only 1% of the population are practicing Christians. However, a large number of people do enjoy celebrating Christmas. And believe it or not, Kentucky Fried Chicken is quite popular on Christmas Eve. It first became popular among tourists visiting Japan over Christmas because it was the closest thing to a whole chicken they could find. KFC realized they had a market here and they decided to take advantage of this opportunity. The company quickly started up a marketing campaign in the 1970s tying in Christmas with their chicken, and luckily it was extremely successful. And now a trip to KFC has become a Christmas tradition in Japan. The restaurant even recommends that customers in the country place their orders ahead of time since they do get really busy. I guess everyone has their Christmas Eve dinner traditions. In my house we always order Chinese food. Let me know what your family does down in the comments. At number 4, sweet treats. In Germany, Christmas celebrations begin on the evening of December 5th. Now that's something I could get behind. On this night, children will leave a shoe outside their bedroom door with a tree branch in it. In the morning, if they've been good, then the branch will be covered in candy. But if they've been bad, then the branch remains empty. And this goes on every night until Christmas. Then in some German communities at Christmas markets, a fair-haired girl will be chosen and be appointed the Christ child. She will then wear a crown with candles and visit nearby houses with a basket filled with presents. Moving on to number 3, whale blubber. Sounds appetizing, doesn't it? Well, in Greenland, this is what's on the menu during Christmas. This dish is called matak and it's raw whale skin with a strip of blubber inside. Apparently, it's supposed to taste like fresh coconut. I don't even know how that's possible. Now, if that doesn't appeal to you, then luckily they have another festive local dish called kiviak. Now this delicacy is made by wrapping a small Arctic bird in sealskin. Then you bury that for several months before eating its decomposed flesh. Yeah, so take your pick. Coming in at number 2 spot, Black Peter. In the Netherlands, Black Peter is known as Santa's mischievous assistant. Black Peter made his first appearance back in an 1850s book. Nowadays, he shows up at festivals and parades and amuses children and hands out candy. People who dress up as Peter are usually white, so this means they need to cover their skin in ash to give them a black face. They put on red lipstick and they wear a curly afro wig. So over time, this tradition has become pretty controversial, as clearly it seems somewhat racist. Recently, back in 2011, Peter was banned from a traditional Santa Claus festival for being viewed as racist. But it looks like soon enough this tradition will come to an end, as in 2014 a court ruled that Peter is a negative stereotype and tried to encourage people to change the deeply rooted custom. And in number 1, Krampus. Yeah, this one is just terrifying. Some countries, you know, they like nice and relaxing family time, while others like to scare the little children. In Austria, during the Christmas season, men dress up like a demon-like creature named Krampus, and they roam the streets. This creature is said to beat children who misbehave, and then they take them away in a wicker basket he has on his back. Back in the day, this did used to be a pretty frightening experience, but over the years it's evolved into more of a show for families and their children. While it is scary, it's now something that brings the town together. Thousands of people gather in Heilbronn Market Square, and they watch more than 120 Krampus impersonators roam through the streets.
First up in the number 5 spot, we have Eureka, Canada. Now you have to give credit to the 8 staff members who rotate schedules to work in a research center in northern Nunavut, where there's not even any sunlight from October all the way up to February. Eureka has a recorded yearly average temperature of minus 1.8 Fahrenheit, which doesn't seem too bad until you realize that's the average of the year, and that once you cool down, you'd probably never feel warm ever again. Even talking about this place makes me feel chilled. Why do I wear blue? Guess it fits the video. Next up at number 4 is Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia. They get the award for being one of the coldest places and also for cramming the most A's into their name. These are things to be proud of, people! Ulaanbaatar is surprisingly populated for a place so cold, with about 1.3 million people, and it also boasts some great art museums that are worth a visit if you feel like venturing out into the average -16 Fahrenheit winter temperatures. Yikes! Moving on to the number 3 spot, we have IJsmitten, Greenland. Now IJsmitten means middle of the ice in German, and I think that happens to be a very fitting name for this expedition site. Researchers investigated the temperature from 1930 to 1931, and the average temperature was -21.5 Fahrenheit, with the coldest being -85. It got so cold for so long that researchers didn't make it out alive, and another had to have his toes amputated. There's good reasons to leave these cold places off your vacation list. Unless you hate your spouse and you want them to this is a bad idea. Next up in the number 2 spot is North Ice, Greenland. Now North Ice is generally left alone in an unknown part of Greenland, and for good reason. In the 1950s, some brave, or well, rather stupid British explorers ventured up to the North Ice and recorded temperatures that hovered near -90 Fahrenheit, and this was in January. Maybe going to somewhere this cold has some kind of appeal to tourism junkies, but I'm not one of those people. Finally, in the number 1 spot, we have Vostok, Antarctica. Vostok takes the award home for not only being the coldest place in the world in general, but also having the coldest temperature ever recorded. On July 21st, 1983, the temperature at Vostok Weather Monitoring Station plummeted to -128.6 Fahrenheit. Vostok is also about 3,488 meters above the sea level, so it lacks in oxygen and the air is incredibly dry. And the warmest it gets is about -25.8 Fahrenheit.
Coming in at number 5, Santa's Little Helper. So first things first, it's never, ever a good idea to get someone's face tattooed on your body, because 98% of the time, it's going to turn out horribly. This little baby is so adorable, but the tattoo looks nothing like him. The tattoo looks like it's of a creepy little demon. Its face looks like one of those little troll dolls I used to have as a kid. Yeah, they're kinda cute, but creepy. This poor little kid was just trying to look all cute and festive for his photo, unknowing that one day some tattoo artist would come around and turn his adorable picture into that. And at number 4, Elf. Yeah, this is terrifying. If you want to watch kids run away screaming, just show them this. Now while this is frightening, I must admit the detail in this tattoo is amazing. Whoever did it did a wonderful job. It's just pretty frightening. And why someone would want Will Ferrell's face as Buddy the Elf tattooed on their body, I couldn't tell you. But at least you know this person has awesome taste in Christmas movies, because Elf is an amazing holiday film. So, like, you know, you could watch the movie every year, or maybe even state that it's your favorite movie in your Facebook bio. But getting this tattoo done is going a little too far. At number 3, Satanic Dreidel. So I'm not sure if this is supposed to show support of a satanic Hanukkah cult or what, but I don't think most dreidels have 666 etched into them and have blood dripping from them. I'm guessing this person isn't a big fan of the holidays. Again, I'm thinking this is a pretty out there tattoo, but it does look like it's a smaller tattoo, so I guess that's one good thing. Coming in at number 2, menorah. Yeah, this one is just offensive. There's no way around it. Here we have a pig on a spit being cooked over the flames from menorah candles. So yeah, like I said, offensive. I don't know how someone would think of this, let alone want it on their arm for the rest of their life. And this isn't a little tattoo either, like the one from our previous point. It's like a half sleeve. But again, this tattoo is done well and it has a lot of details, but that doesn't make it right. And at number 1, R.I.P. Santa. This one just hurts my Christmas spirit. Why someone would want to do this to jolly old St. Nicholas, I couldn't tell you. I guess whoever got this tattoo wasn't behaving and they got coal instead of presents. So this is their revenge. Get a permanent tattoo saying screw you to Santa. Someone is bitter. And I can tell you one thing, I know what they're going to be getting under the tree this year and every other year from now on. Lumps of coal. Santa doesn't give presents to those who get a tattoo of him getting slashed through his head with a sword and have blood gushing out of the top of his head and his eyes.